As you know, on December 19, 2024, Russian President Vladimir Putin held a large press conference to summarize the results of the outgoing year. For 5 hours, he answered questions from journalists from all over the world and Russian citizens. Commenting on this press conference, many experts and analysts noticed that the Russian president was in an excellent mood and looked very confident even against the backdrop of provocative questions from Western journalists. Well, my dear truth seekers, I personally was not surprised at the fact that Russian President Vladimir Putin was in an excellent mood and was very confident even against the backdrop of uncomfortable and even provocative questions from Western propagandists. The fact is that the Russian army has completely seized the initiative on the battlefield and dominates the enemy in all directions of the special military operation zone. Almost every day, the Russian army liberates strategically important settlements not only in the Donbass, but also in other directions of the front. In addition, over the past 3 years, new types of weapons have entered service with Russia, which has no analogues in the world. For example, the world's most powerful hypersonic ballistic missile ORESHNIK has already been recognized by many leading military experts and analysts as a weapon capable of changing the course of any war. In addition, the Russian leader also stated that he did not consider the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad to be a strategic defeat for Moscow in the geopolitical world arena. According to Vladimir Putin, Russia has achieved all its goals in Syria. And the current Syrian authorities are very interested in maintaining good and friendly relations with Moscow. Moreover, the Russian president stressed that it is the current Syrian authorities who are asking Moscow not to leave the region and maintain its military presence on the territory of the military bases in Tartus and Khmeimim. They are asking us to stay in Syria. In particular, in Tartus and Khmeimim. I don't know, we need to think about it, because if we stay, we will have to do something in the interests of Damascus. And for this, our interests should be aligned, Vladimir Putin said. By the way, during this press conference, came more good news for Moscow from the Special Military Operation Zone. In particular, war correspondents reported that the Ukrainian army units had completely fled the strategically important city of KURAKHOVO. Moreover, this information was also confirmed by the famous German journalist and Russophobe, Julian Rops. In particular, on December 19, he stated that the Ukrainian army had lost KURAKHOVO. According to him, this city came under the full control of Russian troops. At the same time, it is reported that almost all Ukrainian officials, who were part of the military-civilian administration of the city of KURAKHOVO, burned their Ukrainian passports and defected to Russia. It is reported that these Ukrainian officials have already passed on quite a large amount of classified information to the Russian military. In particular, they said that there were classified places in the city where the Ukrainian army stored provisions and ammunition. They also provided the Russian military with other valuable information about the Ukrainian army. Simultaneously with this, on the night of December 20th, the Russian aerospace forces, together with the missile forces, launched another massive missile attack on military objects and energy infrastructure facilities in Ukraine. This time, almost all key cities in such Ukrainian regions as Zhytomyr, Kiev, Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, Cherkasy, Dnipropetrovsk, and Poltava were subjected to a massive missile attack. According to independent monitoring services, about 60 explosions were recorded in all key settlements of these regions. Against this backdrop, I would like to highlight the missile attack on the capital of Ukraine, Kiev. In particular, on the night of December 20th, Russian missiles hit the control center of the Special Service of Ukraine and the building of the Design Bureau Luch in the Ukrainian capital. In addition, one U.S. air defense system Patriot was also destroyed in Kiev last night, along with the combat crew. Later, the coordinator of the Russian underground in Ukraine, Sergei Lebedev, confirmed that as a result of this missile attack, several high-ranking officers of the Ukrainian army and NATO forces, including 2 generals of the Special Service of Ukraine, were killed. Indeed, the fact that immediately after that, on the evening of December 20th, the Ukrainian army and NATO forces fired 15 missiles at the city of Relsk, in the Kursk region, indicates that Russia's enemies lost not only high-ranking officers, but also experienced generals in Kiev. By the way, the authorities of the Kursk region have already reported that as a result of this missile attack, 6 people were killed, including a 6-month-old child. Another 10 people, including a 13-year-old teenager, were seriously injured. At the moment, doctors are doing their best to save these people's lives. Even though the Russian military has not yet commented on the missile attack on the Kursk region, sources in the Ukrainian General Staff have already stated that NATO means of surveillance allegedly recorded the process of preparing the launch of the hypersonic ballistic missile ORESHNIK at the Kapustin Yar test site. According to them, the probability that another launch of the latest Russian missile may take place in the coming hours is very high. Against this backdrop, insiders in Kiev said that Ukrainian politicians, including Vladimir Zelensky, had once again hidden in underground bunkers for fear of the latest hypersonic ballistic missile ORESHNIK. By the way, an authoritative military expert and political scientist Alexander Kazak said the latest Russian missile ORESHNIK scares NATO and the Pentagon very much, since Western air defense systems and new generation advanced Western radars failed to detect and record the moment of the launch of this missile, which took place on November 21st. Advanced Western radars and air defense systems proved powerless in front of the latest Russian missile. In addition, insiders in Moscow also added fuel to the fire. In particular, they said that Vladimir Putin had ordered the deployment of the latest Russian missiles in Chukotka, which is located just 86 kilometers from the United States. In fact, the presence of the latest Russian hypersonic ballistic missiles in Chukotka in full combat readiness has made all key American military bases in the United States vulnerable. Moreover, given the fact that the range of the newest Russian missile is 5,500 kilometers, now, if necessary, Russia can easily destroy all launch silos in the United States, depriving Washington of the opportunity for a retaliatory missile strike. Thus, it becomes clear why Putin is in an excellent mood. He is just well aware that in the event of a global war, Russia's enemies will not have even the slightest chance of winning.